Hi, I'm Lou Ann Hunt, and welcome to the May edition of Lynchburg 360. For about 10 years now, escape rooms have been growing in popularity all across the world. These are games where a group of people are locked in a room and have to work together to solve a series of puzzles to escape within a certain time limit. Lynchburg has 2 escape rooms, including this one here on Lakeside Drive. And if you give it a try, you'll soon find there's only one way out.
An escape room is a 60-minute experience generally where a group of you and your friends, family, co-workers get together and have to put all of your minds together, your observational powers together, and you have to collaborate and communicate in order to solve all the puzzles in the room, which have been created so that more than one of you has to work on them. In the best escape rooms, that's how that works, that the majority of the puzzles require teamwork. So this is a great team building activity. It's great for families, church group events, and once you have solved all the puzzles, you win. You find the way out. Most groups actually do not escape our escape rooms. Most groups probably don't escape all escape rooms without some hints or help. Fortunately, we do offer hints. However, groups do have to agree unanimously that they want assistance, because sometimes some people in a group want assistance far more often than others, and it is a group activity. But you have to balance that between, could we get ahead on this puzzle we're working on now, or are we going to spend another 5 minutes on it, or are we going to gamble for the future and maybe not have enough time to finish everything else that we're not even sure what all we have left to finish. And so a lot of that is, how does your group handle the stress of this experience, being able to manage a timed project where at the beginning it feels like we have all this time, all the time in the world, and it goes by so fast. Before you know it, you have 20 minutes left and you just have no idea necessarily how close you are to the end. Our master builder, Jim Morton, and also the owners, Gerald and Lauren Cox, are involved in building each of our rooms. The staff here is also involved in testing and building portions of the rooms, but primarily those 3 are involved in creating and developing the puzzles. You get ideas from everywhere, but our puzzles, we pride ourselves on them being in-house, that we make them here. They are not puzzles that you buy off the shelf. They're are a combination of actual physical puzzles in the sense of putting pieces together to see something, or puzzles that you may have to solve, like puzzles that you may have done elsewhere, but in our context they'll give you new information to use within the puzzle. There are also locks as well, that you have to find information through puzzles in order to get the solutions. Some of our rooms, each one is a little different in how the pacing works for the locks. So in essence, there are rooms where you can proceed a certain amount down a path and then you'll run into a dead end until you go further down another path that you also found but may have set aside. So part of the strength of the best escape room teams is splitting up into smaller groups among your largest group, identifying what things you have to work on, and then dividing and conquering, while still communicating what you're doing with the other people in your group. Our best groups keep everyone else informed in the group as to what is going on, what new information they have, and what they're done with. No matter whether you're bringing in engineering groups or administrative teams or brand new teams, or even teams of like diesel mechanics, people that are not used to necessarily working with other people. If you are part of a team of any kind, you have to work with other people. You have to communicate. This activity is also not just important for identifying who is your type A, top performer. It's getting everyone, including the introverts, involved in an activity to where you're not just handing people something to do and dictating. It is useful to have a project management type person in the group to kind of oversee what all have we done and are we working with. But you need to be able to be flexible and jump in as, a person in the middle of some of these puzzles that are going on as people are, working through them. And so it really is kind of a project simulation, where you have all this time to get to this goal, and you're not sure what surprises you're going to come up with along the way. But it really does test people's communication, their pride, the ability to identify and communicate what they're finding as they go through. And also a huge thing that we've seen is when someone will not accept an idea that has been put forth. And that idea could sound ridiculous. It may be the best idea, it may be the worst idea, but not trying it. Or someone just offhandedly dismissing it, and the energy of the group dies for about 5 minutes, and then everyone goes and disperses, and then they all come back together. And when that was the right idea, that person comes out with their head hung low, and they've learned. You have to learn to listen to the people around you and try things even if you feel silly, because The Lost Professor is a tomb raiding adventure where you are a group of college students. So whether that puts you fast forwarding in your life or takes you down memory lane, you and a group of your college alumni or college students have been going through an archaeology building on campus, and you found some of the lost professor's old notes. Now, the professor has disappeared about 50 years ago, and there are rumors about his disappearance, but he never really turned up again. So following in his footsteps, you have found yourself in South America in a Mayan jungle temple. You're going to solve a series of puzzles in there to figure out what happened, and if you can make it out alive, then fame and glory may await. So it is monitored because we keep track of your progress in the room. We do not want you taking things apart in the room. That is not necessary. So we will intervene if something's being fully disassembled. If you're really frustrated, we don't want you to be frustrated for very long. We don't want it to be an easy experience, but we also don't want you to feel like I showed up and solved 2 things and cost this much, brought my whole family, and now our whole day is ruined. That's not our goal either. We want you to have a good time, and if you want help, you can certainly ask for it, but there are times when we will offer help. In order to monitor that, we do have cameras in the rooms to keep track of your progress, and we have walkie-talkies in the rooms for communication. Well, in today's world, everyone is more and more connected digitally and less connected physically. This is one of the few activities. Think about the things you can do in the Lynchburg area or even where you live in the surrounding area. There are movies, there's dinner. When people go to movies, they're often still not shutting off their phone. When they go to dinner, they're certainly not shutting off their phone. People have to collect them and put them in a box. We do not make you do that, but most people are so engaged in these rooms that even being put into a room with part of your group and part of the group you don't even know. You come out with new friends because you have tackled this challenge. You've had to work together to solve these problems. And you can't do that looking at your phone. And that also dovetails into another issue that these activities are great fun for many ages, but we start at 8 and up at One Way Out. If you have much smaller children and you have a child in a stroller or, say, in a carrier, we can book a private room for you so that it would just be your family. But if you're paying attention to your child, you're not paying attention to the puzzling and you're not having a good time with that. If you're paying attention to the puzzles, you are not paying attention to your child, and that's not good either. So we do limit the age to ages 8 and up, but we do have birthday parties for children that are more in the 8 to 10, 11 range, even older. But we have a party room that can be rented if you want a space after your event ends. And, 11 in that age range, it's been a very popular activity. There is one room that has been created. Our shuttered room is more challenging. It's for up to 6 people. If you like something a little more suspenseful, then that may be up your alley. But that is not, there are no scares in it. It's not a jump scare situation. There are no strobing lights in our rooms. That we have one flashing light, but we have spoken to people who have been in that have epilepsy, and it wasn't like the kind of strobe like a flashlight would put off on its strobe function. It's nothing like that. It's more of a blink. So there's nothing of that concern. This is also handicap accessible building. Our rooms are also handicap accessible, and if you needed a chair or something in order to come, we've had people into their 70s, early 80s that have come to experience our rooms, and so we can accommodate if necessary.
If you're a fan of military history, you might be surprised to know that one of the best collections of war artifacts, especially tanks, can be found just down the road in Danville at the American Armored Foundation Tank Museum. Let's hit the road with Steve Smallshaw for this month's Day Tripper segment.
My dad started collecting when he was about 5 years old, and like anything, you do one thing your whole time, this is what happens. You become a museum, We call it hoarding just due to how much he's got, It never ends. There's always something coming in the door. So we're in a 330,000 square foot facility, and we're pretty much full.
And how do you start collecting tanks?
It turned from uniforms. He started collecting helmets and stuff like that, and then started branching into the bigger stuff as you can find it. And then next thing you know, we got a lot of them.
But there's a lot of military collectors out there, and this is the kind of stuff they really they live and breathe for.
Absolutely, yes. The military history is very very alive. On this scale, there's not that many of us that are this big, so we're growing. Yeah, we were in Long Island, New York. We outgrew our facility, so we had to find a bigger building. Found this place and started to move in about 2000. Took about 3 years to get here. The building was. It's hard to find a big building that's in your price range. So we're a 501c3, so we like it cheap. So that helps out the big picture.
Okay, and was it your dad's dream or vision to have a museum, or was it like you said, you just wanted to? You had so much stuff. Why not put it on display and let other folks enjoy it? Yeah,
it started out just as a collection.
Right.
And as it grew. It's like, okay, well, now what do you do with the collection? Leaving it in the boxes doesn't do no good. People need to see what you have, So as it progressed, he's like, well, let's start with a smaller building, and it goes from there,
And for the first-time visitor, what can they expect to see when they walk in the doors?
Overwhelming. Yeah. It's such a huge place. The average visitor spends anywhere from 2 to 4 hours of walking. Okay, it's a lot of reading, a lot of walking. We have over 120 tanks and heavy artillery pieces, so big cannons, mortars, stuff like that, and over 30,000 small artifacts on display.
Wow. A lot of unique items?
Absolutely, a lot of one-off stuff, stuff you won't see anywhere in the country, even in the world. We have a Panzer IV tank, we have a World War I tank, we have a Sergeant York, very, very rare. The uniforms, so many uniforms that are just, you won't see, they're just non-existent anymore. Wow. Rifles, machine guns, headgear, pins, patches, medals from different soldiers. The stories just go on.
Sure. How do you find a tank? I mean, where do you find them?
And depends which one you're talking about. Yeah. Every tank comes in a little differently.
Right.
Some of them come through the U.S. government. Some of them we get through different governments. Some of them can be bought, or you can be donated to you. It just depends on which actual piece you're talking about.
Okay. And so people who happen to have a spare tank on their hands and want to get rid of it, basically, they give you all a call? And
usually that's how it happens.
Yeah. Okay. And it's going to sound silly, but I'm assuming that's so that they don't just give it to someone who's going to try to drive it down the street or put around it and fire?
Basically, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, basically. They want to know where the vehicles are going,
right.
Who's got them. So, well, we are a museum, okay, so we are 501c3, so every dime that the museum makes goes right back into the museum, okay, trying to keep the lights on,
right.
keep the place afloat, so it's a struggle. Okay, it is a struggle. So, but we're working on it. We're growing. You want to keep the memories alive. The men and women that served and fought in this stuff, when they're gone, the stories go with them. So this is what we try to portray through the vehicles, through the weapons. So you see what they were about. That's also why we do the events. You look at a tank, it sits there, it's cool. When you see it driving by, you're like, wow, I understand it now. I get the point. So it definitely tells the story a little bit better.
So you all do events where you actually get the tanks out and get them moving around?
Yeah, we do vehicle run days where we drive a few vehicles throughout the day. We do flamethrower days where we actually take our flamethrowers out and shoot them. Then we have like reenactment RC tank battles. That brings in players from all over the world to play on our field.
Really?
So that's another big draw. Family Fun Day is another event we do. It's geared more towards the kids.
Yep.
Okay, so we get a lot of kids in for that day. That's a big event for us.
What is it about tanks that people just find so fascinating?
I would say probably the size.
Yeah.
Most of the time you see it on TV, it's a tank. When you come in and you actually see it, most people go, I didn't think it was that big. And then you start telling them how heavy they are, how fast they went, and people are like, I couldn't believe it. Just didn't believe it. So that's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah. And I guess the firepower also is...
Absolutely, yeah. Each tank has a different gun on it.
Sure.
Most of them have different size barrels, stuff like that. So, there's a lot of interchange. It just depends on which one you're talking about.
Right. If someone called them and said, hey, we're thinking about coming, what would you tell them to get them here?
Well, basically, we'd send them to our website. Okay, so you got to see our website because that tells you all the information, answers any questions that you'll have. But basically, once you tell them how many vehicles you have and how big the facility is, usually that's the catch, because like I said, you're not going to go to another military museum that's this size.
Right.
We're just so huge, it's overwhelming when you come here. And that'll get you back twice because you will never be able to see it all in one day.
Yeah. And are you adding items as you go along too? Or?
Every day.
Yeah.
Yep. Every day there's always something coming in the door. We have stuff in storage that we're bringing out. So it's always, you never know what we're going to put out. You never know.
Yeah. Do you find people are surprised to say, man, I can't believe this is in a small city like Danville?
Yes, that does happen quite a bit due to who we are. Okay, there's not that many tank museums out there, not that many that are this big in the world. You figure tank museums were top 5 in the world. Okay,
wow.
And we're in Danville. But that's where the building was. So I go where the building was, and that's how we stay alive.
Excellent. Operating hours are somewhat limited, you were saying, just simply because of the size of the building and problems heating it in the winter and that sort of thing.
It's extremely cold in the wintertime. The main facility has no heat, so the average guest doesn't stick around as long. Usually we're wearing hats, gloves, all that. So we're only open 1 day a week in the winter hours. We're getting ready to go to our summer hours here soon. We're open 2 days a week. Due to the traveling people. Some people travel Friday and Saturday, so we catch a lot more that way.
Okay. And basically just check the website, make sure the hours.
Yep, you check the website. We do Facebook. You can give us a call. We'll be more than likely to help you out, talk to you, whatever we need to do.
There you go. What do you hope people walk out of here with?
The facts. The education of what the tanks were, what the men and women went through to be in these vehicles. That's definitely what we try to portray to people. Say it wasn't an easy life. If you were a tanker, it was hard. It was extremely hard. You lived in your tank. Deserves respect. So that's what we try to educate people on.
That's all.
Now that spring has officially sprung, it's time to polish off those green thumbs and get out in your garden and get growing. To help you out, the Lynchburg chapter of the Master Gardeners has some tips on how to give your garden a lift.
Hey there, I'm Kevin Cam. I'm the Extension Agent for both 4-H and Agriculture and Natural Resources for Virginia Cooperative Extension, located in the city of Lynchburg. We're here at the dig site, the Davis Instructional Garden, located at Humankind. This garden is maintained by the Hill City Master Gardener Association. The Hill City Master Gardeners are Extension Master Gardeners that have been trained in everything horticulture enough to make your life a little bit easier as far as educating you. We're going to learn a little bit about raised beds today. Raised beds has been a system that farmers have used and gardeners have used for a long time, and where they pile up soil and then they put their plants inside of it. This raised bed is just an example of that, where the soil is elevated and then plants go in. Raised beds can be constructed like this. Raised beds can be constructed of wood, it can be constructed of cinder blocks and other different types of materials. But the main thing is, like anything when plants need soil, they need sunlight, and they need water. And they just need a little bit of care. So we're going to dive into a little bit about the logistics of a raised bed. Here you're looking at one of the raised beds here at the Davis Instructional Garden where onions are planted in. Now, a raised bed, it's not a raised bed if it's in the ground. We need to get it up. A lot of raised beds have different heights. Usually you want to go around 6 to 8 inches up off of the ground. Now, some people like to have theirs 2 feet, maybe even 3 feet, especially if you're in a wheelchair, just to make it accessible. The first thing that you need to do when putting in a raised bed is, before you build it, you need to get the ground chopped up. That's what's under the raised bed. And you can do that by a spade or a tiller, just to get that ground going, moved around. And as we add our soil in there, it's going to integrate. And what that does is that it allows for water to be able to penetrate through that soil a little bit better. But I think most importantly, it allows the roots to go down and anchor themselves into the ground a lot better. So when we talk about a raised bed, it's very important to know about the width. Usually they're around 4 feet wide and more often than not 8 to 12 feet long. The reason about the width is that you want to make sure that you can reach from one side and the other side and still be able to get into the middle. We do that because we don't want to compact the soil by standing on it or pushing down on it. because that's going to harm the plants and it's going to be harder for the plants to grow. Now, speaking of compaction, we want to talk about the soil. The soil is very, very important. The reason that we do raised beds is because maybe our soil isn't good. Maybe it's too rocky and we need to build up off of it. We want to have good soil in here and a good mix of potting soil, garden soil, compost, and some wood chips are the excellent recipe to get your raised bed started perfectly. We're going to start with the wood chips on the bottom, so they'll decompose over a few years. And then we want to just mix in some compost and garden and potting soil. Potting soil or garden soil, it's up to you. And we just want to mix that in. Once that's mixed, we can even off the top, and then we put a nice layer of mulch, whether it be pine bark nuggets, if you will, or some straw, just to keep that moisture in as the mulch for the plants so they can stay nice and wet and warm. Now, as you know, if you're growing plants, you have to have water. Water is very, very important. Here at the Davis Instructional Garden, we have a timer set up from a pump, and the pump will come on and then water will be released into our plants. Now, we want to make sure that when we do water, we water at least 2 inches a week, especially if it's drought conditions. Here you see 2 raised sprayers. These are overhead sprayers. Another popular watering technique would be the soaker or the drip tape. What that does is it's just a slow drip right where the base of the plant goes, so there's no excess water. Weeds can't really thrive because all the water is going right to the plant that you want. Here we're in raised bed at Davis Instructional Garden with peppers. And as you can see, we've got a little lady beetle crawling right here, which are good beneficial insects, and it's really exciting to see these around your garden because these are going to get rid of the bad things, sort of like aphids and other bad insects that go on your plants. These are not harmful. They're very friendly, and they love to eat some of the bad bad insects that are in your garden. So if you see these, your garden is doing really, really well. But back to the mulch. This right here is a good 2 to 4 inch layer of just bark mulch. The majority of this is pine. Now, why do we want to put this on there? Well, think about it. If we have our soil and it's not covered up by the elements and it rains, then you're going to have maybe some wash inside of your raised bed that you don't want to have. And soil might run off the sides. You also might have when we are in drought conditions, the sun may bake down and dry up all of the soil, and your plants are really going to be affected. So we put a nice 2 to 4 inch layer of this mulch on top of our soil. You can also use straw if you'd like, but we do this to do 3 things. Number 1, control those weeds. We don't want to have any weeds competing with our plants in our raised beds. Number 2, it keeps the moisture level optimal. You want to make sure that the water doesn't leave that's already been in here. You want those plants to have as much water as they need. And lastly, it keeps our beds cool. We don't want our beds to overheat, just like we don't want them to dry out. So again, if you don't have that much property and want to have a raised bed, or you want to just have a garden, go ahead and put one out. It can be grown on a hard surface or even bad soil. So if you have any questions about how to even start a raised bed, or how much things cost, or what should I buy to do a raised bed, give us a call at the Extension office, 434-455-3740. And we'll be glad to help you out.
That's all for this edition of Lynchburg 360. We'll be back next month with more of the best that Lynchburg has to offer. While you're out enjoying this warm weather, take some time to sit back and enjoy the view.